You have invited me to tell of my journey to Athens, but the journey itself was uneventful. So let me relate what I found to be of significance. For what was said there and the discussions that followed were of importance. They absorbed me fully, and it continues to challenge me each time I tell this story. However, before I begin, I should first say that after that day in Athens, I sought out each of the participants, and they recalled what was said, and I went over it many times in order to be sure that my account left out nothing of value. Well, after leaving our home in Pydna on the slopes of Mount Olympus and traveling south, we finally reached Athens and met Eudoxus, the geometrician, in the marketplace. He greeted us warmly and asked us the reason for our visit. I remarked that we had sought him out in order to find out if we could get a full account of the visit of Parmenides of Elea, or if he could not give us this, to refer us to someone who could. I went on to say that while we have some interest in philosophy, we at Pydna are too close to other things, and few of our fellows ever journey to Athens to get a full account of the event. And it seems that you Athenians no longer feel any obligation to keep us informed about what is being said and done in your city. Our discussion then proceeded like this.
Then you have heard of the vision itself, Eratema.
Oh yes, we did hear of it, but we hadn't realized its importance until Ion's recent studies of Hesiod and Archaeologos acquainted us with its possibilities.
I'll tell you what you want to know. But first, you must tell me what Ion saw. For I am more than curious to know. What could have moved you to reconsider it? Surely that would be a fair exchange. For it has been many years since this vision took place, and only a few people still seriously deal with it.
True. But as you no doubt have heard, Ion once thought of himself as a master of reciting, until he had a certain discussion and was forced to admit that what he thought he knew was different than what he did know. As a result, he said he recognized that he must study all other good poets, as well as Homer. Since that time, he and his reciting have changed remarkably. And recently, he has been demonstrating that many of the references in the vision of Parmenides are directly related to the sacred writings of Homer and Hesiod. Thus, he thought Parmenides might be saying something of deep significance, either in competition with these poets, or, and this is what we find most curious, that he is seeking to go beyond them. Now, as you know, we like to think of ourselves as close to what matters most to men and gods. But not having heard any more of this, we were forced to surmise and guess at the rest. For you see, Ion himself admits that he never heard the whole and can only discourse upon the first part of what Parmenides has said.
Come, you can't stop there. What is it about this possibility that seems so important to you now? And tell me, in what part did you see the whole?
I see. If I am to be sure of your helping us, I should tell you all. All right then. We discussed what we'd been able to piece together from Ion's report, and with what we added or guessed, it seemed that Parmenides might be saying that the One is above the gods. Or, what is stranger yet, that the gods themselves are one, and that all the many things are in fact one. We thought that such a belief, which runs counter to all that we know to be true, might more properly be a subject for humor rather than philosophy. For surely, all the animals around us, and the plants and trees, including any man-made thing, if each a one, then taken together they constitute a many, not a one. However, as you know, Ion is very convincing, and he insisted that such a teaching, clothed in such images from Homer and Hesiod, should not be dismissed lightly and just might contain more of a challenge than we realize.
I'm not sure if you fully answered me, but I shall try to answer fairly. I, of course, was not there, but first heard it some years ago from others. It is still being discussed in Melita. Perhaps we should journey there to hear it from Pythagoras' old friend, Philolaus. For I always find it to my advantage to hear again of that vision.
When we arrived and found Philolaus, we were surprised to find that he was quick to discover the purpose of our visit and why it seemed so important to us. He invited us into his home, and after his attendants had made us comfortable and offered us wine, he told us the whole story. He started by recalling that when he was a young man, he was always anxious to hear any discussion dealing with the pursuit of philosophy. And therefore, he seized the opportunity to meet with others when he heard that Parmenides was going to be in Ceramicus for the great Panathenaea at the elder Pythagoras' home.
You are asking of me what I most want to give. So, let me first offer thanks to whatever may be for your request. I am always ready to discuss philosophy, even though it may not be taught today as essential to one's life. In those days, through many discussions and dialogues, we were able to see it unfold among many of us. And it was Parmenides who seemed to be in some strange way closer than any of us to philosophy itself. In those days, we were drawn to philosophy because of him. For when you saw Parmenides, it was terribly difficult not to try to become, like him, a philosopher. His way had a depth to it beyond all men. His most everyday acts were done in such a way that it seemed to be a devotion to the gods themselves. And one of the poets who knew him well was fond of saying, Parmenides, a gift of the gods, became a hymn to the gods. Through him, they saw themselves in their own reality. Well, on the day of the meeting with Parmenides, several of us had previously been discussing the consequences of his doctrine. If the one, how could it have any relationship to the many? How could the many be even said to exist for such a relationship? Yet, if none, it would seem that this manyness we encounter is all a madness, a dream which doesn't even exist as a dream, but as nothingness itself. But then, insofar as we relate to a manyness, we too are nothing. And again, the many must include the idea of order, design, and even the intelligibility behind things. If so, we reason, then that which binds them together, love, must equally be said to be part of the many. And so, with it too, must thought and reason be relegated to the many, to appearance, and so to unreality. Well, we were somewhat astonished at our conclusion, for the one itself then seemed barren and peripheral to all that we so earnestly sought in philosophy. It seemed we were brought to praising a thing as barren as the rocks and stones, and ignoring the mystery of the man that stood by them. We were nearly driven to the point of denying all our reasoning, rather than deny those things that had originally drawn us into philosophy. We felt we had been robbed by the very sentinel and guardian we had appointed to protect us. And so we felt we may have reached a truth, but in doing so, we had lost both the meaning and significance that seemed so vital to us all. The more we dwelt on this, the more it seemed that the many was more praiseworthy and to be honored than the one that now appeared austere and barren. Well, we knew Parmenides knew, but we didn't know what he knew, nor even how he knew. It was often said that he had a vision, but none of us had heard it directly. We thought if we could urge him to relate it to us, it might provide clues to what we so desperately sought to understand and know. If he could be brought to see our dilemma, we felt he would help us. However, we all knew visions were a private, personal affair, only disclosed when others could match its own seriousness and purity. we decided to invite him to tell of his vision. Then, after, we would discuss it among ourselves and probe it for its meaning. We wanted to understand his vision, each of us for ourselves, to use it as a challenge for our own minds, to vindicate and prove itself by seeing in it all its dimensions, thereby causing ourselves to grow by sharing in his vision, which by reflection had become our own. Thus, we asked him to tell his vision without adding one word, either of explanation or of commentary, for we wanted it as close to its original form as possible. He agreed. And so, on that day, without one word of introduction, after lighting a sacrificial fire to Apollo, he turned to us, remained silent for a few moments, and recalled his vision.
The steeds which bore me, reaching as far as the heart could desire, escorted me when they went, guiding me on to the much fabled way of the divinity, which bears the man who knows throughout every city. On it I bore myself, for on it the very wise horses had conveyed me, galloping with the chariot, while maidens led the way. The axle, blazing in the nave, let loose a singing hum, for it was urged round by a whirling wheel on either side. When the handmaidens of the sun, throwing back their veils from off their faces with their hands, left the halls of night and hastened to convey me into the light. There are the gates of the ways of both night and day, and they have an embracing lintel and a marble threshold. They are ethereal, but are closed by great doors, and much laboring righteousness holds their alternating latches. The maidens, speaking gently, paying attention to every detail, persuaded her so that she quickly threw back the fastened bolts from the gates. The opening of the gates made a wide expanse, revealing the doorposts wrought of bronze. The hinges, held with revolving bolts in their hollow parts, and fastened with spikes. At once the maidens guide the chariot and horses straight through them on the high road. And the goddess greeted me. Graciously she took my hand in her hand, and she spoke words in this wise, and addressed me.
You've linked with immortal charioteers and the steeds which bear you to our halls. Welcome. Since no evil fate, but righteousness and order sent you forth on this road, which is far from the path of men. It is right for you to learn all things, both the calm heart of well-rounded truth and the opinions of mortals among which there is no persuasive truth. In the same way, you will learn these things also, how the appearances rightfully appear to be, all being in the midst of each. Come, I will tell you, and you, after listening to the fateful story, carry it away. These are the only roads of inquiry for thought. The one that it is and cannot not be. This is the road of persuasion, for it attends upon truth. While the other, both that it is not and that not being rightfully is, this path I declare to be without tidings. For neither can you know not being, for it is impossible, nor can you speak it, for it is the same thing both to think and to be. Gaze at things which are far away, yet securely present to the mind. For one will not cut off being from clinging to being. For neither does it wholly scatter itself everywhere throughout the universe, nor combine together. It is inseparable from me where I shall begin, for I shall return back there again. Both saying and thinking that being is right. For to be is, while nothing is not. I bid you ponder these things. From this first road of inquiry, I hold you back. But next from this one, on which mortals, knowing nothing, wander two-headed. For helplessness guides the wandering mind in their hearts. There are crowds of them without judgment, borne violently about, both deaf and blind, amazed, by whom to be and not to be are thought to be the same and not the same. It is the backwards turning road of all things. Never shall this be demonstrated that not being is, but from this road of inquiry hold back your thought. Nor let habit force you down that much experienced road, guiding your aimless eye and echoing ear and tongue. But judge by reason this much contested refutation spoken by me. There remains then but one tale of the road. Is. There are very many signs upon this road that being is unborn and imperishable, complete, unique, and both calm and perfect. Nor was it once, nor will be in the future, since it is now, altogether, one embracing. For what birth will you seek out for it? Whence and in what way did it grow? Nor will I allow you either to say or think that it came from not being. For it is unsayable and unthinkable that not being is. What thing would stir it up to grow starting from not being, sooner rather than later? Thus either to be rightfully is altogether, or it is not. The strength of persuasion will not allow anything to come from being besides itself, nor is it proper for righteousness to loosen the fetters on being born and dying, but holds them. The decision concerning these things is in the following terms: is or is not. One has decided for oneself, therefore, to allow this road to be unthought of and unnamed, for it is not the true road, so that the other is the true and genuine road. How could being be in the future? How could it be born? For if it was or will be at some time, it is not. Thus birth and unheard of death are extinguished. Nor is it distinguishable within itself, since it is all the same, not more here nor less there, which might prevent it from embracing. But it is all full of being, thus it is all embracing, for being clings to being. But motionless in the limits of great bonds, it is without start or pause, since birth and death were driven very far away, while true persuasion drove them off. The same both remains in the same, and reposes by itself, and so it remains there securely. For mighty necessity holds it in the bonds of limit, for it holds it back all around. For on account of order, being is not unlimited. It is without lack, for it would need everything. Both thinking, and that on account of which there is thought, are the same. For you will not find thinking without being in what is uttered. For nothing either is or will be except being, since fate bound it whole and immovable. So with respect to this thing, have all names which mortals established, believing to be true, been spoken. Coming to be and perishing, being and not being, and both change of place and exchange of bright color. But since there is an outermost limit, it is completed, resembling on all sides the shape of a well-rounded sphere. It is evenly balanced from the center in all directions, for it is not rightfully somewhat greater nor somewhat smaller here rather than there. For neither is there not being which might prevent it from reaching the same, nor is it possible that being is more than being here and less than it there, since it is all unbreakable. For it is equal on all sides. It reaches out equally in limits. At this point, I cease my persuasive account and thought about truth. But learn from this the opinions of mortals, hearing the deceptive order of my words. For they have decided to name two thought forms, the unity of which rightfully is not named. In this they have wandered, for they have distinguished opposites and assumed that they were different in form and signs from one another. On the one hand, the ethereal light of flame, being gentle and very rarefied, the same with itself in every way, but not the same with the other. And that other is in itself the opposite, dark night, close and heavy in form. I tell you the whole probable arrangement of the universe, so that no opinion of mortals will ever surpass you. But when all things were named light and night, and these in accordance with their powers both for these and those, everything is full of light and of invisible night together, since there is nothing which does not belong to either. You will know the ethereal nature and all the signs of the ether, and the invisible works of the pure holy torch of the sun, and whence they came into being. And you will learn both the nature and the wandering works of the round-eyed moon. You will learn of the all-embracing sky, and whence it grew, and how necessity guided it and fettered it to hold the limit of the stars. How earth and sun and moon, both the inseparable ether and the Milky Way, the outermost Olympus and the burning power of the stars were stirred up to come into being. For the narrower rings are filled with pure fire, and those that come after them are filled with night, while a share of light is let loose among them. And in their midst is the goddess, who steers all things everywhere. For she rules over love and hateful birth, sending female to mingle with male, and again male to mingle with female. The very first of all gods she contrived, Eros, shining by night with borrowed light, wandering around the earth, always looking towards the sun's rays. For each time the mixture of the much wandering limbs holds fast. In this way mind comes to man. For it is the same for all men and for each what the ordering power of the body thinks. For the excess is thought. On the right, boys, on the left, girls. When woman and man mix the seeds of love together, the power forming from opposite blood in the veins by preserving proper proportion shapes a well-formed body. Now, if the powers fight when the seeds are mixed, they will torment the growing embryo with the conflict of double seed. So, let me tell you, according to belief, these things were born and now are. And afterwards, having grown, they will perish. For each, men have established a distinctive name.
And we, those of us nearest to him, have continued to this day to ponder what was revealed to him. Others might be tempted to simply believe the truth revealed to him, or reject it all, believing it false. But we regard belief in any form as chaining the spirit of the mind to the hard, barren rocks of the earth. And so, rather than live out a self-inflicted punishment, we continually seek to mature our own vision, to give flight to that part of us which seeks higher unities, in imitation of that chariot ride that soared into the light of reality. And so, you will find us discussing and reflecting on his words and urging others to do the same, thinking it the better part of a man's life to pursue such questions.
I can see why you would reject beliefs. But I never could understand why you favor questions rather than answers. Surely of the two, answers are superior to questions, as knowing is to not knowing. What possible importance do you see in continuing the state of not knowing?
You think it's strange that we treasure questions more than answers. Perhaps because you are not aware that when questions are pursued with the utmost determination, one discovers that out of the silence of the moment emerges a mode of seeing with the mind alone, while what we call answers spring from a different source, for they are past beliefs, returning to be put in service again. Habit replaces the vision, and so we are fettered to the past and lose the richness of the moment. When you or I accept an answer, it is because it fits easily into the other beliefs we regard as truth. And so it gives the appearance of truth. It has the feel of a unity, but its parts are joined together without thought and understanding. This is far different from the true unity that can be encountered beyond the level of belief. When we see or gaze at things distant, yet present to the mind, and experience in simplicity a unity that binds and embraces both itself and the things it relates, and in so doing lifts understanding to a more lofty level. If this is foreign to you, then you dwell in a land where the true exercise of reason is strange. And of course, this makes it difficult for you to adequately judge these things. Let me urge you to watch yourself carefully, to pay attention to what happens when you accept an answer, even mine, and see whether in doing so you are paying homage not to the divinity, but to an authority you make into a beloved king. Should you wish to regain your lost sovereignty, it is difficult. Yet, one way is to accept only answers that lead to even grander questions, in the way a scaffold is used in the construction of a temple. Or an answer might become a step in a series of steps, climbing to even higher questions. Actually, it is the answer that is really strange. For an answer prematurely cuts off the life of a question before it reaches its full flowering. An answer, the flirtation of the soul with feeling, shudders with the approach of a question. Clinging to a question, one enters the very heart of the beloved, knowing not an answer, but the state of being. Thus, we carefully teach ourselves to cautiously avoid believing and to question even the words of Parmenides, as seriously as we must our own. Or else, we too will remain strangers to what we most desire to see and partake of, ourselves. We start with Parmenides' vision, reason our way back to the one, and then force ourselves to turn about and ask why the universe appears as many, as imperfect, when our reason tells us it simply is, or is one. Our challenge is to remain with the conclusion of reason, while facing fully the evidence of our everyday life, which is so compelling, leading us to the belief that the many is and the one is not. The questions force us to doubt what we formerly felt was so true and certain. Thus, by taking the question, one accepts the invitation to help refute one's own answer. This way of proceeding builds our confidence in reason and slowly breaks our habit of relying on the eyes, ears, and all the senses for the truth about reality. Holding fast to a question may appear as a madness, but it may not be as mad as believing the many to be real and the one illusion. This, then, is our life, a life dedicated to the one and questioning the many.
It may be as you say. I often recall your saying that there is no fundamental conspiracy, no deception, because appearances provide us with a glimpse of reality. However, I never saw how it applies until now. If what you say is correct, then when we encounter order and intelligence, we are becoming aware of a deeper order of things. Yet, for myself, I find nothing difficult in grouping order and reason together. But the goddess includes love. How can love and reason be reconciled into a unity or one? Certainly love is the most irrational of things.
Looking for an answer or a discussion? Why not try a question? Make this your personal task. Consider both reason and love at their best moments, not when they are mixed and impure. Such times when each seems to show itself best. Then ask yourself, what kinds of things, what kinds of feelings and moods must be present for each to function at its best? Then try to discover how much of each is hidden, as if in disguise, in the other.
You return it to me and suggest it may be a one. Then we produce the many? Could it really be that what we create, in part our familiar world, and boom, regard as the many, the existent world of flux, with all its innumerable differences, is not the real? As I understand it this time, the goddess seems to be saying that there is no problem in distinguishing opposites, such as love and reason, or light and night. Only in assuming that they are different in form and signs from one another. If so, The problem of the one may not be to seek a new vision, as if it were something new we are striving for, as if some new thing were to be achieved, but rather to find the source of this simple mistake and rectify it. But then, how do you seek to change what seems so basic, so intrinsic, and so real as to form the very fabric of our being?
Now you have a question, if not the question. But you don't have the problem in your own terms. When you ask a question, sincerely deal with your own answers. Otherwise, your question will be hollow and a shadow of the real question.
This, then, is the story as I have been able to reconstruct it. For myself, I think I have come to realize why the numerous expressions from Homer and Hesiod and other divine poets are included in Parmenides' poem. Truths revealed to man from whatever source are divine and can be compared with one another. And so Parmenides is in the company of men like Homer and Hesiod. The source of their greatness he makes visible, for his vision is that of reason itself. And so he goes beyond them. Just so philosophy is the successor of all those traditions that are strangers to the one, and akin to all those that pursue it. And now, as to my own plans, I think I should tell you that I came to Athens for one thing, and I found another. It happens sometimes that when you get a new look at something, you can no longer see it in the old way. It is similar to lifting the veils from one's face. Once you know how something is, you can't make believe it's still the old way. At first, I didn't realize the impact that Parmenides' poem had upon me. But in telling this story again and again, I find it has affected me most profoundly, so that sometimes I can't remember which words were once mine and which the others. It has been many years since I first told this story. Word of my report travels ahead of me, so that in whatever city I visit, I tell of the story again. And in repeating it, I see it in a new, deeper way.